Hello and welcome to AlCapsi's webinar, Be One, Get One, The Power of a Mentor. I'm Mackenzie Lauka and I serve AKSI as the Associate Director of Education. I'll be moderating the webcast today. So before we dive into the content, just a few housekeeping details. All participants have been muted for the presentation and are starting with their video turned off. But we're going to ask you to keep yourselves muted throughout the presentation. If you would like to turn your video on so that others can see you, you're welcome to do so. We do have the chat feature available so you can interact with other attendees and the presenter during the presentation. When posting, it's going to share your name, but also consider mentioning your chapter or your university as well. At the end of the presentation, we'll have a brief Q&A. So at that point, you can submit your questions via the chat feature, or if you would like to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question verbally at that time, you may do so. So for our program today, we have Malia Nakamura, and at this point, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you, Malia.
Thank you, Mackenzie. So thank you all for being here today. I'm going to be presenting on both mentorship and menteeship. And what really inspired this presentation was my experience both as a mentee and a mentor at my school, Seattle University. I'm in the Gamma Omega chapter. I'm a senior, and during my time at Seattle U, I've spent mentoring through the New Student Mentor program at the business school, as well as just informally through both our chapter as a big and through other just clubs on campus. So I really felt inspired to share what I've learned, and then also some information from a couple books, including Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In and Richard Hackman's Managing Work Teams. Both are really great books. I really highly recommend. So we'll get started. So just before I dive in, just maybe on the side, if you have a notepad or something, you could write down who is someone currently that you consider to be a mentor. This is something that we'll revisit later on. So if you just want to keep that on the side, just to look back on in the future. I think it's really important to establish just from the get-go, there's a really distinct difference between mentorship and sponsorship. These two things really will get you to different paths. And right now we're going to be focusing on mentorship primarily, which I think is really important to establish that it's a relationship in which a more experienced or more knowledgeable person helps to guide a less experienced or less knowledgeable person. I've seen this be confused many times, especially in my experience in undergrad, because a lot of times people will reach out to someone, particularly someone in a company that they want to work at, and ask them to maybe refer them or give them a recommendation to work there, or maybe just kind of see them as a stepping stone to get to their end goal, which might be a job, internship, that kind of thing. That, if you're seeking it, is a sponsorship where someone uses their influence to advocate for someone else. A lot of times a sponsorship doesn't really lead into a kind of a full-blown relationship where you can talk to that person on a daily basis, get their feedback on things. It's more so just a one-off, let me help you get to this position you want. So if you want a sponsorship, that's a whole different thing, but a mentorship is really more of a sustained relationship, and building it does take time. And we'll be going into how we can effectively build a really great mentorship, and then also how to be a great mentee. So just some benefits for mentees is pretty self-explanatory, I'm sure, things that you've heard before. Obviously, to provide impartial advice and encouragement. This is something that I think can really be great if your mentor works at a different company than you, or maybe is a different major, that kind of thing, so that they can be kind of removed from the situation you'll be seeking advice on. They can also develop a supportive relationship with you. This can be more of kind of a coaching relationship, so seeing you through difficult things in your life, some struggles. They can assist with problem solving, so it goes back to providing advice and encouragement. Improve self-confidence, so they can be your cheerleader, really give you that support you need when you're trying to get things done that are difficult. They can offer professional development, so resume, cover letter, that kind of thing, typical AKSI, bread and butter. Encourage reflection on practice and increase motivation. This last piece, increasing motivation, isn't something that I initially thought of when I kind of went into mentorship relationships, but with my little anecdotal experience here, I can delve into that. So when I was a freshman at Seattle U, kind of was at a loss of direction and purpose, and I wasn't really sure where I wanted my career to end up, especially during my 4 years at SU. I was feeling a little discouraged and not sure where I wanted to pursue my interests. I happened at that time to get a job working as a marketing manager at the recreation facility on campus. And that's me on the right in this photo. And in the middle is the manager who hired me at the time. Her name's Kristen. And I did not really anticipate her to be such an amazing mentor to me, but the ways that she really helped me were to increase my motivation to pursue my passions. And in doing that, she really helped me find those three pillars of motivation: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And I, prior to my relationship with her, really wasn't sure what my purpose would be at Seattle U. I wasn't sure what I wanted to really focus my time on mastering. And I was not in any way autonomous. I was really relying on seeing where other people had been before, or just relying on my professors for guidance. I wasn't sure that I could actually be efficient myself in doing the things I wanted to. But in the time mentoring me, my manager, Kristen, really showed me that I had a purpose in my 4 years at SU, and I could do that, master my craft, which at the time was being a photographer for the rec center, while also at the same time being autonomous and making my own decisions for myself. So in all those ways, I became motivated. And although we aren't in the same field, she does work in recreation and I am choosing a path in marketing, I still consider her to be a great mentor to me because she helped to motivate me in those ways. And that's all to say, in any relationship you might have, professional, informal, just a networking type relationship, although they might not be in the same field as you, there's still ways that they can find to mentor you. So don't necessarily put off some kind of potential relationship just because you don't think that they can maybe help you get to the next point in your career. There might be ways that they can help mentor you that might not be kind of upfront initially. So that all being said, we know what's really important about getting a mentor. I want to really debunk getting a mentor. I think that's really something that a lot of times people will tell you to do when you're either going through school or you're starting your career, whatever stage you are. I think people will tell you to go out and get a mentor, but I'm here to say that getting a mentor really isn't all that. It's more so fostering a relationship over time and coming to a mutual understanding with somebody and really showing them that you're somebody that they would want to mentor. So essentially you attract what you put out. Something I like to tell people and the people I've mentored is that someone's always watching, no matter where you are. If it's just in a classroom or if it's in some kind of meeting, people are always watching, and you never know if that person watching could be your next mentor. So back to Sheryl Sandberg, I really, really look up to her, and I think a lot of the things she has to say are great. She's currently the COO of Facebook and has worked at a lot of other places previously. She has some really strong feelings about mentorship, primarily about getting a mentor. And she says that if someone has to ask the question, the answer is probably no. When someone finds the right mentor, it's obvious. The question becomes a statement. Chasing or forcing the connection rarely works. So her little experience with this in particular was at a conference. I'm sure this has happened to her many times. She's a really respected businesswoman. But someone came up to her after she spoke and really just popped the question, will you be my mentor? And she writes that this experience really was uncomfortable because she really had no idea who this person was. She didn't see any reason why she should invest her time, which of course is very valuable. So reaching out to somebody in that kind of sense and asking them just to be a mentor really should not be the first path of action if you're seeking someone to give you that guidance. So the next section is going to be just explaining some ways that you can attract a mentor to you so you don't have to go out and kind of initiate this uncomfortable exchange. So this should be kind of something self-explanatory. Be someone who is enjoyable to mentor. So that means really excel at everything you do, ask for more responsibility, promote the success of others. So seem as though you really care about other people, not just yourself, and build your support network. So it really is important that you do get to know as many people as possible. Network is everything, not all the time, but certainly if you're trying to see as many options as you can for people who can mentor you. So really, to go back to my point, assume someone is always watching. Excel in every way that you possibly can so that somebody you never know is watching and could offer to reach out and provide you with some mentorship. So just a couple brief mentee best practices. Always remember that your mentor's time is valuable. give them a problem to solve. Don't complain. A lot of times when I've been in mentor-mentee relationships with my freshman students, as me, myself, and mentor, a lot of times they'll just come in kind of with some vague complaints, not really giving me anything I can concretely help them with. So if you really can give them ahead of time some thought to what the issue is so that they can formulate a response and not just have to sit there, kind of be a sounding board while they complain, that's going to be the best use of their time. Like I said before, you really want to promote the success of others. So if they can really see that you're willing to bring people up alongside yourself, they're going to be really invested in spending their time with you because they can see that you're more of a selfless person. Definitely act on the advice that they give you. They're not going to just give you some advice and hope that maybe you do it. They're really going to be intrigued to see if what they gave you as advice is going to pay off. Do your homework ahead of time. So if you do really have to reach out to somebody and ask them for advice on that kind of thing, make sure to see if they're kind of an expert on that subject, whether that be stalking on LinkedIn, seeing if they've done any previous speaking engagements, that kind of thing. Don't take yourself too seriously. So that might mean just kind of letting go of your ego, accepting that sometimes you might not know the best in certain situations. So kind of giving them ownership of the problem. Ask questions and treat feedback as a gift. So really just being really excited to get any kind of feedback that your mentor gives you. And I know in AK Sci, we're really great at receiving feedback because of the pledging process. So this should be pretty easy, but really making sure that when they give you feedback, you're being really receptive. And really an emphasis on the relationship is more important than the label. So obviously there can be many instances where in your place of work or in school, you'll be assigned an official mentor with that title, but really don't get obsessed with that. So if you have somebody in your life that you really consider to be someone who can give you great advice and be a shoulder to lean on, that can be somebody who's a mentor, even though they don't have that title. And finally, just a quote from Oprah: I mentor when I see something and say, I want that to grow. So be that person if you can. Be somebody who people can see potential in without you even having to say anything outright. So there are a lot of studies that show that mentors select proteges based on performance and potential. Just an instance of this where it's kind of an unlikely pairing. When Oprah was just starting her career as a reporter, and I think she was about 20, she met Maya Angelou and got the chance to interview her. Although they're in very vastly different careers, Angelou really saw potential in Oprah, and they really established a meaningful relationship that lasted for a really long time and really just learned from one another. It wasn't just Angelou telling Oprah certain things. It was more of a two-sided relationship. It's really, I think, a wholesome one too. So that's kind of the best case scenario, is if they can learn from one another. So definitely back to my point, give before you can receive, excel, and you will get a mentor. I think particularly in my experience with someone I consider to be a great mentor, my manager from my recreation job, I think she really saw something in me when I gave my best effort to anything she asked me to do, and really proved that anytime she would invest into me, I would definitely give back to both the team and also the things that she was looking to really put forth into the organization. So make sure that you're always doing the most and showing your supervisors and anyone else in your organization or school that you really are going to put forth your best effort. So all that being said, if you do have to approach a stranger, there's just somebody out there who you think is just amazing and you really want to have them be in your life as a mentor, there are some strategies to go about this. Definitely inquire an appointed, well thought out inquiry. This is also some strategies that you can take into, say, a career fair or a networking scenario where you can potentially be walking up to somebody that you've never met before and you do want to get something from them, which could, in that case, could be a job. Pointed, well thought out inquiry. So if somebody, for example, doesn't have very much time doing this, just really cutting to the chase is probably the best course of action. You'd also want to be crisp, focused, and gracious. So definitely thank them, even if the interaction doesn't go the way you wanted it to go. And if in that situation, you're maybe just asking them to provide one piece of advice, follow up to let them know the results. So get their information if you can, and avoid vague questions. So back to the career fair situation, don't ever ask what's your company know. Approach them with the prior knowledge, having done your homework. So now we're going to move into performing as a mentor, and I think a lot of people might be surprised to know that really they play the role of a mentor in someone's life and they may not know it already. I've been lucky enough in my time at SU to have mentored about 30 students my junior and senior year, and having that official title as a mentor really opened my eyes to the relationships I've had with other people and how maybe I've acted as a mentor towards them. And it might have just been for that day, that interaction, but it really happens more often than you might think. So I've broken performing as a mentor into 3 distinct pillars. The first being creating psychological safety. So psychological safety is a concept that really is applicable to every kind of situation you can think of. I learned about this concept in one of my management classes through the story of a 2-year-long study at Google where the top performing teams were just assessed over the period of 2 years to really understand why they were doing better than their internal competitors. And one really, I think, touching instance was a really, really great manager who, before his initial meeting, his first day, he took the time to speak with his team and share with them that he had been battling with cancer and was still undergoing that struggle just from the get-go. And it was seen in the study that him being vulnerable and sharing that information with the team really created an environment where his team felt comfortable sharing personal information. They really felt that there was a lot of trust within the leadership and the employees in the organization. And because of that, collaboration happened. Creativity was just amazing, and people did not ever feel scared to come up with new ideas. They didn't feel intimidated when maybe they had to admit that they made mistakes. So that put into a mentorship context is really important. And a way that I often will go about this in my mentorship relationships is a lot of times just admitting that I've made failures in the past, and that's totally okay. So with my mentees, I'll tell them a lot of times that I did really poorly in this one class that I know to be very challenging to a lot of students. And I'll do that right from the get-go. Icebreaker activities will also work in the same kind of vein, but really telling people something personal about yourself will set the tone for people feeling comfortable to share things about themselves. And in the long run, that just really creates a positive environment for people not only to share things about themselves and feel more safe, they can also potentially come up with great ideas, feel great sharing them. And if somebody is more introverted, this can also really create a great environment for that. So psychological safety, a sense that people will not be embarrassed or punished for speaking up. And this is a concept that can be translated to many different situations, but for mentorship, it's really important and something that needs to happen right from the get-go. So before anything else happens, if you are a mentor in that relationship, create psychological safety as much as possible so that you can help your mentee to the best extent you can. The second piece of being a great mentor is effective listening, and these are 7 really great pieces to effective listening. Obviously, listening is thought of more as a passive activity a lot of times, and this is another kind of technique I've learned in a management class, and doing a activity where you keep these things in mind and listen for 2 minutes to your partner speak, tell a story, maybe an issue that they're struggling with, and trying to employ at least 2 of these effective listening strategies is really challenging, especially avoiding early evaluations if you're in a mentorship role can be challenging. So if your mentee is telling you about something that they're struggling with, really waiting for them to give you all of the information, asking as many questions, paraphrasing as much as you can before you give them that advice that you're really sitting at the edge of your seat waiting to give is challenging. So if you have an opportunity, maybe with people in your chapter, with people in your organization to practice effective listening, it's really a great way to understand the ways that listening can make that much of a difference. And sometimes in that relationship, a mentee will want to just have you listen, and paraphrasing what they're saying, really just asking questions can sometimes be the best thing that you can do. So I can encourage you, I won't do it now, but if you can do the exercise, just have 2 minutes of someone really just telling you about an issue that they have in their life, and then spending maybe 30 seconds after either doing all of these effective listening strategies or maybe just a couple. It's a really great way to open your eyes to see that listening really is dynamic. It's not a passive activity. So finally, practicing emotional intelligence. This really is something that I've read a lot of different things about. Obviously, it's one of those nature versus nurture issues where people, a lot of times think that you're born with a certain amount of emotional intelligence, but I think it's more something that you can work on over time if you feel like it's something that you struggle with. So emotional intelligence, really important in a mentee-mentorship relationship. So there's these 4 different competencies within emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. I think personally the most important in the terms of mentorship is social awareness. So practicing empathy is really, really important in this context to making sure that you understand where the mentee is coming from. In my own personal experience, I think something I've really seen with being empathetic is understanding that success means different things for everyone. So trying to impose your definition of success onto a mentee can sometimes be really damaging for them and can show that you're really not willing to put, your feet in their shoes. So making sure that you're understanding where they're coming from can show that you're really willing to mentor them to be the best person they can, not the best person that you think they can be. So self-awareness, really knowing yourself and your feelings, that's really integral to being a great mentor. Knowing who you are, what the best offerings you can give to your mentee is important. Self-management, emotional self-control, putting ego aside, so letting them know that, you're a person too. A lot of times if you're being mentored by someone older, it can be really intimidating. So really being aware of that. Social awareness, empathy, and forming connections with others, and relationship management, being a good mentor, role model, and authority figure. So again, on the converse of the mentee side, as a mentor, assume everyone's watching you all the time. People are looking up to you to see what your behavior kind of exemplifies. So emotional intelligence, really important, and practicing it also can lead to good results. It's not just something that you're born with. So to return to the person you wrote down at the beginning of the session, maybe now that has changed. Who is someone you want as a mentor? And kind of thinking back to maybe the notions you had of what a mentor was before we delved into all these concepts. It might have changed. It may have been somebody before that has a job that you want to get in the future, maybe somebody who you can see yourself in their shoes in 5 years, but maybe now it's somebody who you just really respect their leadership. Maybe it's somebody who you think, has done something great in a different field from the one that you're hoping to get a career in. So it's just an interesting way to reflect. And maybe as time goes on, you can look back on the list you've made and continue to make adjustments. So one final quote, this is from Newton and been reiterated many times throughout history: "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." So this is Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, 2 really great, accomplished men, and Bill Gates has benefited from mentorship from Warren Buffett. But I think he would be the first to admit that his success has really been because of his mentors throughout his life. And I think it's just a really great way to reflect on your successes whenever they do happen and recognize that people in your life have definitely helped you get to those places. So I think for me, just understanding that as I've progressed through my undergrad has really been eye-opening to me. And it's made me really want to pay things forward, and not just, give back to the things I've received, but really go out of my way and help to mentor and tell people about my experiences is something that's really important. So thank you so much for listening in, and I just am really happy anytime I get a chance to talk about mentorship. So thank you for giving me that chance to do that. Do you guys have any questions?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Malia, for that great presentation. As I did mention earlier, if you have questions, go ahead and throw them in the group chat, or if you want to ask it to Malia verbally, you can either just unmute yourself. If you want to raise your hand, then we can unmute you for you. So first question I'll throw at you, Malia. So we started the conversation talking about kind of the value of why you should look for a mentor and the benefit that you as a mentee are going to get. In a mentor-mentee relationship, what's the value for the mentor? Why should they want to serve as a mentor?
Yeah, so I think in Sandberg's book, she talks about how one of the mentor-mentee relationships she had where she was a mentor, a lot of things were brought to light in the organization that she really had no idea were going on. And because the mentee felt really safe speaking to her on those terms, she learned a lot of things that could be fixed and adjusted in the company, where I don't think if she had been in that position, just, as that person being her employee, they would have felt comfortable sharing. So if you have a mentee, you can really, have them be kind of the listening ears and understand what things can be changed, if you can be a better manager, a better just coworker in general. So that's definitely one benefit. And I think, just speaking from personal experience, it can really help you as a professional and as a student understand what it is that you want to do in the future. For me, just helping a lot of my mentees find what they really are passionate about and what they care about. And oftentimes that's not in the business school, which is hard for me to help them with. It's really shown me the path that I want to take forward and why passion and purpose are really important. So it's not just about making money. For me, it's really shown me that helping people is something that's really important to me and I want to continue doing for the foreseeable future. So having that kind of relationship where you feel as though what you're doing to help others pays off a lot of times can really be eye-opening to see that you might want to pursue a career where you're helping people all the time.
So the vast majority of people watching are probably students. So they probably in that 18 to kind of 20 some range. A lot of times when we think of a mentor, they're probably a lot older than us. So what are some things that college age students can think about if they are looking to be a mentor?
Yeah, so great question. I think a lot of times people think of mentors as somebody who's way older, and I tried my hardest not to really emphasize that, just as somebody with more experience maybe or knowledge. If you're looking to be a mentor, and I know a lot of times even in our chapter there are relationships where the big is even younger than the little, which just happens because of when people pledge, that kind of thing. It is intimidating, I think, sometimes to take that role of being the person who's more knowledgeable, especially in the context of university where that age difference is just exacerbated. I think it's just important to think of whoever you're mentoring as just a person, not defined by their age. And I know in workplaces that can happen too, where somebody maybe younger is mentoring someone older. Actually, this happened to me when I was an intern at a food broker a couple summers ago, where somebody came in, she must have been 50, and I had to train her on the role that I was working in as an intern. And it was really scary because I knew obviously she had a lot more life experience than me, but really just focusing on the one thing I knew I had more experience than her can really help to narrow the focus of the mentorship relationship. So although obviously I learned so much from this person in my internship, I really understood that my role in mentoring her was just the job. So removing yourself as much as possible as from thinking about the age and just thinking about the task that you're trying to help them with.
All right. I really like that you talked about when you're looking to find a mentor, not just going out and saying, hey, I found someone, will you be my mentor? But focusing on fostering that relationship first. So for people that are looking to find a mentor, what are some more tangible things they can do to really develop that relationship?
I guess I'll kind of talk about my relationship or my experience working at Boeing last summer. I think the thing I learned the most from there, especially because it's such a massive company and it's difficult to stand out and show people that you're worth their time mentoring, is show up, and then once you show up, show off, which kind of goes against a lot of societal rules we have just of not really setting the attention on yourself. But I understood kind of from the get-go at Boeing that I wasn't going to be successful unless I made it clear to all the people around me that the things I wanted to work on, the things I wanted to be successful in, just from the get-go. So although it's kind of weird a lot of times when you're starting it at a new place, just to tell your supervisor or your manager that these are my goals and that these are the things I want to achieve during my time here, it can really help. And then oftentimes they'll help connect you with the people who you might benefit from getting to know. So for me, I was working in a manufacturing operations role, which wasn't really something I was super interested in. So from day one, I told my manager that the goals I have are to work in marketing as much as possible. And I really just hammered that home as much as I could with her, told her that as many times as I could. And then once I actually had the chance to work on a marketing project, I did my best to show off as much as I could my skills so that the people who I wanted to get my work in front of really saw that I was worth their time. So yeah, show up and show off. And sometimes that might mean doing things that you don't really want to do, but it will pay off in the end.
Right, so not seeing any other questions at the moment. Malia, do you have any last final thoughts for everyone listening about mentoring, mentorships?
I don't think so.
All right, so thanks so much. Before closing out then, just one last thank you to Malia for her time and everything that she shared with us today. And a little reminder to everyone watching to make sure you guys log into the MyAKSci community where you can engage with other members in the collaboration groups and register for more upcoming events in the events tab. So thank you all for attending, and I'll see you in the MyAKSci community.